He gave away a piece of my past, now he's losing his future. I was only 5 years old when my Nana handed me a wrapped bundle with the most delicate hands I had ever seen. Inside was her bone china tea set, white porcelain with tiny pink flowers hand-painted around the rims, gold trim on the edges, and the faintest scent of lavender clinging to the box from her linen closet. I didn't understand its full weight at the time, but Nana made sure I knew it was special. It had been passed down from her own mother, and now, because I was her only granddaughter out of 11 grandchildren, it was mine. That tea set became the centerpiece of my childhood memories. I wasn't the kind of kid who had fancy toys or shiny new gadgets, but with that tea set, I felt like royalty. My Nana would host proper tea parties for just the two of us, crustless cucumber sandwiches, fresh scones, strawberry jam, and strong tea that she'd water down just enough for me to sip. We'd dress up, wear silly hats, and use real napkins folded like swans. It wasn't just playtime. It was our tradition. Even as I grew older, I never stopped cherishing it. I kept it spotless, stored carefully in a glass front cabinet in my kitchen. Anytime I had little girls visiting, I'd bring it out to keep the tradition alive. I'd make mini sandwiches and bake little cakes just like Nana did. It became a way to share joy, one that I imagined I'd one day pass on to my own daughter or granddaughter. My husband knew this. He saw how much it meant to me, saw the way my face lit up when I brought it out, how I'd treat it like a sacred artifact. I talked to him about Nana a lot. He knew I lost her years ago and that the tea set was one of the last tangible things I had of her. It wasn't just porcelain, it was a connection to every warm memory I had of being loved, listened to, and valued. So when my sister-in-law and her family came to stay with us for a week, I was excited to set up another tea party. Her daughter was 6 and full of energy. I thought it would be lovely to show her how magical tea time could be. My sister-in-law even joined in, and for an afternoon we all sat laughing around my old wooden table, sipping out of china cups I had used since I was a little girl. At the time, I thought it was one of those beautiful full-circle moments, but I had no idea that tea party would be the last time I'd ever use my Nana's set as freely as I had for almost 30 years. A couple of weeks after that family visit, one of my closest friends was bringing her 2 daughters over for the weekend. Naturally, I planned a tea party. It had become something of a signature move by now, an offering of warmth, whimsy, and a little slice of tradition I could share. That morning, I got up early, just like Nana used to, and started baking. I made cucumber and egg salad sandwiches, lemon scones, and a small chocolate cake. The whole house smelled like a bakery. With the food cooling and the girls on their way, I went to retrieve the tea set from the cabinet where I always kept it, and it wasn't there. At first, I thought maybe I'd misplaced it after the last tea party. I checked the dining room shelves, then the sideboard drawers. Nothing. I started to feel a tightness in my chest, a kind of creeping panic I hadn't felt in years. I tore through every cabinet, every drawer in the kitchen, even the garage and basement in case I'd done something truly absent-minded. Still nothing. I was frantic by the time my guests arrived, but I forced a smile and brought out some mismatched mugs instead. I made it work, but I was dying inside. I couldn't focus on the conversation or the laughter. All I could think about was where it had gone, and why. That evening, I kept searching. My husband, noticing my distress, stepped in. He watched me ransack the house and joined the act. He looked under beds, opened closets, and calmly repeated, "It couldn't have just walked away." I remember nodding numbly, clinging to the hope that maybe I really had misplaced it. Maybe I was just tired or overwhelmed. But something about his voice, his calm, his insistence, didn't sit right. I didn't have proof yet, but something in my gut told me he was lying, that he knew more than he was saying. Still, I had no evidence. And without that, I couldn't say what I was starting to suspect. A few days later, he came home with a box under his arm and said, "Look, I found something that might help." I opened it to find a set of cheap, flimsy china, probably from Walmart or some discount store. It looked nothing like mine. The cups were too light, the design generic and printed on, not painted. No memory, no care, no soul. Just ceramic pretending to be something meaningful. I didn't even hesitate. I threw the whole box in the trash. He looked shocked, called me ungrateful. Maybe I was. But I wasn't ungrateful because the set wasn't expensive. I was ungrateful because it was an insult. You don't replace 28 years of love and legacy with a $20 knockoff and expect that to heal the wound. That was the moment I realized he didn't get it. Or worse, he didn't care. Days turned into weeks, and the ache in my chest only grew deeper. Every time I walked past the kitchen cabinet, it was like a ghost tugged at me. Something that had been a fixture of my life, something that had followed me through childhood, college, marriage, was just gone. And the worst part? My husband acted like it was no big deal. He'd stopped helping me look. Instead, he started minimizing, telling me that maybe I'd loaned it to someone, that I probably packed it away for safekeeping and forgot. Then he'd switch tactics, patting my hand and saying, "Hey, maybe it's time to let it go. It's just stuff." But it wasn't just stuff. It was the last connection to a woman who raised me with love and tenderness when the rest of the world felt cold. It was the centerpiece of my happiest memories. You don't just forget where you put something like that. You don't just move on. I started spiraling, questioning myself. Was I losing it? Was grief clouding my memory that badly? But every time I tried to believe I'd misplaced it, something tugged at me. A quiet, persistent voice in the back of my mind whispering, "You didn't lose it. Someone took it." And eventually, that whisper got louder, sharper. I began to replay the last time I'd seen it, during that tea party with my niece. I remembered her looking at the set with awe, asking questions about the little saucers and doilies. I remembered how my sister-in-law had commented on how vintage it was, and how her daughter had begged her to let her have a set like this. That's when something clicked. Suddenly, everything else started to make sense. My husband's weird calmness, his pushy attempts to replace it, the subtle gaslighting. He had done it. He had taken it. I didn't know how or when, but I knew in my bones he was the one. Then, one evening, while I was in the other room folding laundry, I heard his voice. He was on the phone with someone. His tone was casual, but his words weren't meant for me. He said, "Just make sure to put it away when we visit, and tell Melly not to mention anything about it. She's still upset." He didn't say tea set. He didn't have to. My blood went cold. I stood frozen in the hallway, gripping a pair of socks in my hands, listening to the final shred of trust unravel in real time. When I walked into the room and locked eyes with him, he froze like a deer caught in headlights. I asked him directly, "Where is it?" He fumbled, trying to hang up, sputtering excuses. And I didn't wait. I called him a thief. Not in anger. In truth, he didn't even deny it. Not really. After I called him a thief, he just sat there, staring at me with that stupid, frozen expression on his face. Then he stammered out some nonsense about how he meant to talk to me about it, how his niece loved it so much, and how it was really a toy for little girls anyway. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. A toy? This wasn't a plastic tea set from a garage sale. This was a family heirloom, a legacy, a memory-made porcelain, and he gave it away like it was nothing. Asked him if his sister even knew it was mine. Did he lie to her too? Or did they both just assume I'd never notice, like I wasn't allowed to care? He didn't answer. Instead, he tried to reason with me, told me I was too old to be playing tea party, said I needed to grow up, that this kind of thing was for children, and that he was going to talk to me about leaving it to her anyway. Like that made it better. Like that made it his decision. At that point, it wasn't even about the tea set anymore. It was about what it represented. How easily he could disregard something sacred to me. How comfortable he was lying to my face. How effortlessly he decided my emotions didn't matter. That I was immature for caring. That my grief, my joy, my family's history was silly. And when I didn't accept his gaslighting, when I stood firm and told him to get it back, he acted like I was the unreasonable one. Then his sister called. Her voice was smug, defensive, like she'd done me a favor. She tried to justify it, said her daughter treasured it, and that I was overreacting, that I could afford to let it go. I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I just said calmly and clearly, "Return it in the same condition you took it, or I'm calling the police." And then I hung up. It wasn't an idle threat. I meant it. And for the first time, I saw the fear in my husband's eyes, not because he was sorry, but because I was serious. He tried to walk it back, apologized half-heartedly, saying we could work this out, but his words were hollow. I had seen who he really was. Someone who would take from me, lie about it, dismiss my feelings, and only grovel when the consequences became real. And I wasn't playing pretend anymore. The next morning, I kept my promise. I went straight to the police station and filed a report. I brought a photo of the tea set, a picture I had taken years ago during one of my tea parties with a friend's daughter. I explained it had been stolen from my home, that it was a family heirloom passed down through generations, and that I knew exactly who had it. The officer was calm and polite, but I could see the skepticism in his eyes. What I was describing wasn't some flat-screen TV or a stolen car. To him, it was a few cups and saucers, just dishes, but I made sure he understood what it represented. And to my surprise, he took the report seriously. I didn't stop there. I called my brother, who lived in the same city as my husband's sister. I explained everything. He didn't ask questions. He just said, "Send me her address." Within hours, my brother had driven across town, walked up to their house, and knocked on the door. I don't know what he said. I don't even care. But he came back with my tea set, wrapped in towels and packed inside a box, every single piece intact. Sat on the kitchen floor and cried as I unpacked it. Each plate, each cup, each delicate saucer, still mine, still whole. And that's when the phone calls started. My husband was furious. He called me names I won't even repeat here, accused me of being dramatic, of embarrassing him, of dragging the family into something petty. He said I'd overreacted, made it a federal case over some dishes, but he wasn't yelling because he was hurt. He was yelling because he'd lost, because I didn't roll over and let him rewrite the story, because I didn't let him decide what was worth valuing, because I stood up for something that mattered to me, and that to him was the ultimate insult. I realized then that the man I'd married didn't respect me. He didn't see me as a partner. He saw me as someone to manage, to manipulate. And that realization hurt more than losing the tea set ever could. After I got the tea set back, I didn't even put it back in the kitchen. I wrapped it up in soft towels and packed it away in a box, far from anywhere my husband could reach. For the first time since the entire ordeal began, I felt some kind of peace. Not because things were fixed, far from it, but because I had reclaimed something that was mine, not just the tea set, my dignity. My husband didn't stop sulking. He shifted tactics. Again. First it was rage, then guilt. Now he was in groveling mode. The same man who called me names 2 days earlier was suddenly soft-spoken, apologetic, saying things like, "I didn't realize how important it was to you, and we can get past this." But I couldn't get past it. Because I didn't just lose some china. I lost my trust in him. I lost the comfort of believing I was married to someone who respected me. And the longer I sat with that realization, the more it burned. So I began packing. I started with the most important things. Letters. From my nana, photos, books, jewelry, keepsakes. Anything I didn't want to risk losing again. I didn't tell him at first. I waited until he came home and saw the suitcases by the door. He looked stunned, hurt even, but not surprised. He asked, "You're really leaving? Over this?" And I said, "No, I'm leaving because you stole from me, lied to me, gaslighted me, then tried to guilt me when I stood up for myself." He told me I was throwing everything away over something stupid, but it wasn't stupid. What's stupid is staying married to someone who thinks betrayal is negotiable. What's stupid is letting a man diminish the parts of you that matter, until you start questioning if they were ever worth defending in the first place. I wasn't about to let that happen. When I told him I was leaving, he followed me around the house like a lost dog, suddenly trying to remember every good thing we'd ever shared. He reminded me of our wedding, our vacations, the times we laughed in the kitchen late at night, but none of it mattered anymore. Not after what he'd done, not after I saw the truth behind the mask he wore so easily. He tried to guilt me into staying, said I was blowing things out of proportion, that couples fight, that we'd get past this just like we had other disagreements. But stealing from your partner, hiding it, lying about it, then turning it into their problem when they catch you, that's not a disagreement. That's a character flaw. And I wasn't about to live the rest of my life doubting the man sleeping next to me. I told him 2 of my brothers were coming the next day to help me move. And I meant it. I wasn't bluffing, and I think that's when it finally hit him. This wasn't a phase. That I wasn't crying for sympathy or looking for him to win me back. I was done. He spent the rest of the night sulking in the bedroom while I kept packing. In the quiet, I started thinking about all the other little moments I'd overlooked before. The times he'd dismissed my feelings, made jokes at my expense, subtly chipped away at things I loved because he didn't value them. It all started adding up. The tea set wasn't the beginning. It was just the line he finally crossed. I looked around our house, my house if I'm honest, since I'd bought it before we married, and made a mental checklist of what mattered, what I was taking with me, what I could live without, and what I'd never let anyone take from me again. The morning my brothers arrived, I felt calm, steadier than I had in weeks. We loaded up the boxes one by one, while my husband watched from the doorway, saying almost nothing. Whatever words he might have had left, he kept to himself. Maybe he finally understood that an apology without change is just manipulation. Or maybe he didn't care anymore. I honestly don't know, and I don't need to. Before I left, I took one last walk through the house. I didn't cry. I wasn't angry. I was just finished. I took everything that meant anything to me, because I knew if I left it there, I might never see it again. We'll fight over the rest in court. But I made sure that what couldn't be replaced was already safe in my hands. Since then, people have asked me if I really left my husband over a tea set, and every time I tell them the same thing. No, I left him because he stole from me and pretended he didn't, because he looked me in the eyes and made me feel crazy for mourning something sacred, because when I caught him, he called me immature, because instead of protecting something I cherished, he dismissed it as just stuff, because he showed me, in no uncertain terms, that what matters to me means nothing to him. The tea set was just the catalyst. What it really came down to was this: I will not spend my life with someone who makes me feel small, who chips away at my worth, who believes they have the right to decide which pieces of my heart are worth preserving. So no, this wasn't just about China. It was about memory, about legacy, about trust, and most of all, it was about finally choosing myself.
You've heard the case. While you consider your verdict, the court calls the next case to order.
My sister called me a sinner, so I revealed her darkest secret. I never planned on starting a family this soon. I'm only 20, and even though my boyfriend is 27, we weren't exactly trying for a baby. But when that test came back positive, I wasn't scared. I was surprised, yes, but deep down, I felt ready, or at least ready enough to try. My boyfriend was supportive from the moment I told him. He smiled, pulled me in close, and said, "We've got this." That was all I needed to hear. So we decided to share the news with our families. Nothing huge, just a small dinner, home-cooked meal, and a chance to show them we were ready to face this next chapter head on. I was nervous, of course. 20 and pregnant doesn't exactly scream perfect timing to most people, especially in my family. But I held on to hope. Maybe they'd see what I saw, a new beginning, a happy accident. And for the most part, they did. My mom gasped and then cried. Happy tears. My dad cracked a joke about becoming a cool grandpa. And even my aunts smiled, offering soft congratulations over wine and roast chicken. For a moment, I felt safe. Like maybe this pregnancy wouldn't be a scandal. Maybe it could just be joy. But that's when she walked in. My sister. My perfect, polished, devout older sister. 29, painfully righteous and twice as judgmental as anyone I've ever met. She didn't hug me, didn't smile, didn't say congrats or ask how I was feeling. She just stared. And then with a voice calm as a sermon and sharp as a dagger, she said, "Wow, pregnant? Out of wedlock?" I expected better. I tried to laugh it off, tried to change the subject. But she didn't stop, not even close. Once she started, there was no stopping her. My sister launched into a full-blown lecture right there at the dinner table, like she was giving a sermon and I was her only audience. She didn't yell, she never does. But her tone, it was heavy, deliberate, laced with disappointment. "God is watching," she said. "You've invited shame into your life, into our family." My mom tried to step in, gently reminding her it wasn't the time or place. But my sister waved her off like she was just background noise. "This isn't about comfort," she snapped. "It's about truth, and truth comes before feelings." I stared at her, stunned. My fork was frozen, halfway to my mouth. And I swear, the room had gone dead silent except for her voice. It was like watching someone perform a monologue she'd been rehearsing for years. Quoting scripture, ranting about morality, accusing me of disrespecting the values our family was raised with. Never mind that I'd never seen her quote those values when it came to herself. What made it worse was how calm she was. She wasn't crying. She wasn't angry. She was smug, righteous, her chin tilted high like a judge handing down a sentence. She didn't care that I was shaking. She didn't care that everyone was uncomfortable. She just kept going. And that's when I felt something inside me shift. I was done sitting there while she condemned me like she was above reproach. Done letting her wield religion like a weapon, while hiding behind a fake smile. She wanted to drag my name through the mud in front of our family? Fine. I had a shovel too. I opened my mouth, not even sure what I was going to say. My heart was pounding, my cheeks were burning, and every instinct told me to just hold it in. Let it pass. Be the bigger person. But then I looked at her. My sister. So self-righteous, so cruel in her calmness, and I remembered something. I remembered the secret, the one she made me swear never to tell. A few years ago, we had a moment, a rare one. She had come to me in tears, shaking, terrified. She had gotten pregnant. She was with a guy she wasn't supposed to be seeing. Someone from work, I think. But she never gave a name. She wasn't married. Wasn't even dating him. Seriously. She cried for hours that night. Told me she couldn't have the baby. Told me no one could ever know. Said it would destroy her reputation. Her ministry, her standing at church. She begged me to drive her to the clinic 2 towns over. I did. I held her hand. I didn't judge her. I didn't say a word. I was her sister. And now she had the nerve to sit across from me and call me a disgrace? That was it. I straightened. My back looked her dead in the eye and said, "Funny you're preaching about sin considering what you did." Her eyes flickered, just for a second, but I saw it. That flash of panic. That tiny crack in her mask. "I may be pregnant out of wedlock," I said, loud and clear, but at least I didn't get rid of the evidence and pretend it never happened. You could hear a pin drop. No one moved. No one spoke. My mother had her hand clamped over her mouth, eyes wide. My dad was frozen, staring between us like he couldn't even process what he'd just heard. One of my cousins dropped their glass and it shattered against the tile. But even that didn't break the silence. My sister didn't deny it. She didn't scream or call me a liar. She just stood there, pale, shaking, mouth slightly open, like she was trying to breathe through a wave of shame that had finally caught up to her. Then she turned around and walked out. No words. No apology. No dramatic exit line. Just the sound of her heels on the floor as she left the dinner table, left the house, and disappeared into the night. It was surreal. I just sat there, heart pounding, trying to slow my breathing. I didn't. Regret it. Not in that moment. I felt like I'd ripped off a mask she'd been hiding behind for years. I wasn't proud of how it happened, but I was tired of being her punching bag. Tired of watching her parade around like the moral authority, while the rest of us lived in the shadows of her fake perfection. But that feeling of power, it didn't last long. My mom finally broke the silence. She stood up, furious, and rounded on me like I'd just set the house on fire. "What is wrong with you?" My mom shouted, her voice shaking with anger. "Why would you do that tonight? You've ruined everything." I just blinked at her. Ruined everything? Wasn't this supposed to be a celebration? Weren't we here to share good news? My pregnancy, the start of something new? Apparently not. Apparently the bigger problem was me daring to speak the truth out loud. I tried to explain. Tried to tell her I didn't plan it. that I snapped because I couldn't take being publicly humiliated by someone who was hiding worse, but it didn't matter. My mom was too furious to hear me. She kept pacing, ranting, about how I'd embarrassed the family, about how I'd dragged up something that didn't need to be said. But here's the thing. My sister made it need to be said. She pushed me, cornered me, judged me in front of everyone and expected me to just take it. And for what? To protect her secret? To keep up the illusion that she was better than the rest of us? Not anymore. She was done playing the saint, and I was done letting her. I turned to my mom and said, maybe I did ruin your evening, but she's been ruining lives with her judgment for years. I just gave her a taste of her own medicine. That shut her up for a second. Then she just shook her head and walked off, mumbling something about needing air. One by one, the rest of the family trickled away too. Some shocked, some awkward, some pretending to check their phones like nothing happened. I was left sitting there in the glow of candles and cooling dinner plates, wondering if I'd just lost more than I gained. The next morning, I woke up to silence. No texts, no calls, no congratulations, just a few notifications from social media, and even those felt hollow. I checked my messages, half expecting my sister to unleash some fiery condemnation or passive-aggressive Bible verse, but there was nothing. She went completely silent. And my mom? She didn't reach out either. The woman who'd cried tears of joy at the announcement of her first grandchild had now ghosted me because I stood up for myself, because I dared to speak a truth that she wanted to keep buried. I won't lie. It hurt. It hurt to see how quickly people turn cold when you stop playing nice, when you stop protecting the narrative they're comfortable with. But at the same time, it felt like breathing again. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying my sister's secret on my back. I wasn't nodding along while she preached purity and judged others from her pedestal. I wasn't letting her shame me into silence. I was finally free of her shadow. A few days later, my dad called. He didn't say much, just asked if I was okay. I said I was. He paused, then said, she had it coming. That was it. Maybe not a full endorsement, but enough to make me feel like I hadn't completely lost everything. It's been a few weeks now. My sister still hasn't spoken to me. Neither has my mom. I heard through a cousin that she's been taking time to heal and processing the betrayal. Funny how telling the truth becomes betrayal when it challenges someone's lies. But here's what I know. I didn't ruin our family. I didn't create the divide. She did. She spent years weaponizing her faith, judging people with no room for grace, and pretending to be something she wasn't. She hurt me with her words the night of that dinner, and I let her. Until I didn't. I'm not perfect. I never claimed to be, but I'm not ashamed of this baby. I'm not ashamed of the life I'm building, and I won't let someone else project their hidden guilt onto me just to keep their fake image intact. Sometimes, the truth causes damage, but sometimes damage is the only way to clear out the rot. Do I feel bad about what I said? A little. Not because it was wrong, but because I know it cut deep. I didn't want to be the one to do that, but she left me. No choice. This wasn't about revenge, it was about finally drawing a line. I didn't start the war, but I ended it.
The case has been heard. The stories have been told. Now it's your turn to judge. Leave your verdict in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe. The Court of Stories is always in session.